Hello YouTube vintage stereo restorers and collectors. This is the last one I'm going to do on the Pioneer SX424. And I was kind of thinking of, I've done so many receivers, what's a good way to finish this one off? And that's it right there. When are you truly finished on some of these? I'll give you an example of what's been done on this one. Kind of hard to tell from the underside, but we spin it around. So I've recapped the tuner. This tuner does not have transistors that succumb to black lead disease or to noise. It actually doesn't have any C458s or any of those in it. So I could leave all the transistors alone. I had this slipping shaft problem which I fixed, and that got the tuner working. Recapping it sounds great. Then I moved on. Here's the main filter. I'm going to show you. It had a 2000 in it, 50 volt, and I went up to 3300, 63 volt, just a little bit of a buffer to get it to fit in the original clamp. This is where it gets a little hard to see. And every time it was like, I'd be like, I love this receiver, I love this series, but the way the board, the main amp and preamp board is underneath like that, it's always, oh yeah, take that board off. I was just watching somebody else's video, and what they went through, you got basically, you take the faceplate off, you take the shaft nuts off, you take all the screws out, you end up having to desolder at least one side, usually this side, pull it back, flip it down, and try to work on it like that. And I said to myself, I'm not taking that board out. It always causes problems, whether it's flexing it or whatever. I'm going to work with it in place. And I'm like, okay, how do we do that? Well, this side, of course, is very easy to access. The other side, well, show you for instance here, this is basically comes off of this cap, and there's a number of resistors, there's two Zener diodes, there's a regulator transistor here, and some filter caps pointing the other way. And I was able, by placing a small mirror here, of getting them all desoldered and out, everything on this side of the board, and then back in. And it actually was a lot easier that way. It worked out really well. Okay, so then you have the stuff at the front and the middle stuff. So why do I think this way? Well, I worked in car stereo a number of years ago, and sometimes you had to come up with ways to make it easier to work on stereo installation. I remember one, the Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra, I think it was. There's this procedure to get at the radio, and you had to take out, quite a few screws and remove these vents and all this. And the guys in the shop and I, we came up with a way of doing it in 10 minutes instead of an hour and a half. Anyway, here is the phono preamp. You take this cover off, it's a shield. So everything can be accessed from this side or by spinning it around. Not a problem. All these that are here, I've only got a few left to go. I've been working on this off and on because there are other things I had to kind of prioritize. Let's get some light here. But where it really got tricky was back in here. Okay, there's two transistors, and there are these. You run into Pioneers of this vintage. It's these. The C1344 was the scourge of 70s Pioneers. They came in after the C458. They're these sort of bustle back transistors. This one, the leads were completely corroded and they go noisy, or I've had it where they don't go noisy, but they're just not quite turning on properly. And you get odd artifacts in the sound. So there's two up front and two here to replace. Not that many. There were 4 in the phono preamp. Not hard to get at. But these two that are back here, I just left my clip, my clip in here. I was able to clip onto them, desolder from the other side, and pull them out. So I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left. The next one, every one after this that I do in this series, I'm leaving that board attached. I figured out a way to do it, and it's just been, maybe takes a little longer. It's not always about saving time. So far, by replacing the 1000 microfarads, which were glued in, really glued in, it's sounding great. Like, when you do it this way, then you, after each batch of caps, whatever you replace, it just seems to sound a little better, a little fresher. So it's almost there. I'm leaving in all of the original lights on it because they work. So we're in a situation here, like I say, I could have just cleaned the controls, okay? And it was working, it was playing. The FM was really out of whack, but I thought, okay, maybe I'll just do the FM. Then I thought, maybe I will just fix, because I had this selector switch. If you remember, I did the one on the quick and easy selector switch repair. That is held, and it will hold. I could have just done that and walked away. And what I find is, after working on them for a while, I can hear the difference between fully recapping and not. It might be minor, it might be something I imagine, but reliability is another thing. I find it's somewhat competitive. Like, people are buying the best units they can find for the money, and if you have something that's not 100% there, because it's become so difficult to get technicians to work on this stuff, and there's less technicians every day, people want to buy stuff that's restored. And they almost don't care who restored it, as long as it's a complete and successful restoration. And so, bearing that in mind, I find there's a lot out there right now. I was doing my morning scan on what's for sale today, and like dozens of vintage receivers just in the local Kijiji and Craigslist and Facebook, and so many of them have flaws. And it's stuff that you think, someone will say, well, you might have to just replace a capacitor or two. Not if you want it to sound, if you want the best experience out of the equipment. No, you've got to recap it. You've got to go through the resistors and the power supply, emitter resistors, things like that, test their values as you go along. Really, what people are looking for at this stage of the game, when you're looking at something over 50 years old, it just needs to be a full restoration. That's my opinion. So I intend to stop when I'm done the last 6 caps on this board. I intend to stop, and I'm going to give you a little review on this piece of equipment. First of all, build quality. These boards are a joy to work on. These boards have they're very easy to unsolder, very easy to resolder. They don't lift. You'd really have to beat them up to get the lands to lift. They're great for replacing parts and putting it back together, and you can resolder it so it looks like factory. That's good. The wiring in it makes sense. The Alps switchgear is really high quality. Like, it was well built. A few access issues on this one. As far as the sound goes, it sounds as good as any other capacitor coupled amp in the low wattage category. Great. Tube-like. Warm. All those things. Actually, one thing that's a bit of a joy on this one, and you'll run into this, Pioneers, from about 74 on, they started to eliminate things like center voltage adjustments in the power amp, bias adjustments. This one does not have any potentiometers, whereas other brands kept them around at least until they got into the 80s or beyond. This one doesn't have anything. It has a system there's a jumper here with a resistor, and basically you check across an emitter resistor, and there's a range, and it's a very wide range. It's 5 to 15 millivolts. These are all, this one's all around 5-ish, 6, like, which is good. If it's out of whack, then you remove that resistor and put in a different one. So actually, one of the issues with other amps of this vintage is bad bias pots, which can really put the machine into thermal runaway. It can cause noise issues. These didn't have that. It has thermistors. They're actually diodes, I believe, on each side. So it's temperature controlled. The center voltage and bias, you don't have to worry about it if it's within a set range. And it's kind of a good idea, actually. They were ahead of the time on that. As far as the sound goes, I listened to it through headphones. I listened to it through some realistic minimus 7s. This thing punches outside its class. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say things that way, but it sounds good at low volume. It sounds good at high volume. It has strong bass, strong tight bass. Doesn't even need the loudness control on this one. And this is one thing about loudness control. Somebody mentioned in the comments about my opinion on loudness controls. Here's the thing. The potentiometers in these, it's the same volume control whether it's a 15 watt unit or an 80 watt unit. And about 40% of the control is within range of the loudness circuit. When you turn loudness on, it activates the tap through a capacitor resistor circuit. Okay? Here's where the big difference is. When you're listening to these for room level, you're in the 4 to 7 range. Okay, so you're not actually using the loudness circuit very often on this amp. You're actually in the sweet spot of this amplifier's design. It doesn't even need a loudness circuit. Higher powered ones, you tend to have the volume control not as high. Not always the case, but especially in Sony's, which have that logarithmic pod, you tend to be in the maybe 1 to 3 for the same volume level, and the amp's not in its sweet spot. You're still, average listening is only 1 watt to 3 watts maybe. You need the loudness circuit more on higher powered amps, in my opinion, going back a few years and over a few models. Anyway, just wanted to mention that. So the next one I have coming up on the bench, and I have to get on it fairly quickly, I have a Luxman Champagne Series integrated amp. And it was one of these ones I've been trying like for 3 months to buy this thing from the guy. Finally, we arrived at a price. Anyway, it's a really nice unit and not found very often. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening.